the Smith Station man who kidnapped, robbed, and then murdered 18-year-old Auburn freshman Lauren Burk.
The story is impossible to comprehend. It has been 10 years of pain for a local family. In '08, college freshman Lauren Burk was forced to undress, then shot when she tried to escape.
In the quiet college town of Auburn, Alabama, the events described in this video took place in 2008. Though 15 years have now passed, the final word in the Lauren Burk case has yet to be spoken. Lauren Ashley Burk was a vibrant and beloved student at Auburn University. She was known for her academic excellence, her active involvement in campus life, and her warm, friendly demeanor. But on a fateful day in 2008, Lauren's dreams and aspirations were tragically cut short. This is the heartbreaking story of Lauren Burk, a life taken far too soon, and the relentless pursuit of justice that continues to this day. In the spring of 2008, a series of events unfolded that would forever change the lives of Lauren's family, friends, and the entire Auburn community. What happened that day? And who was responsible for this unspeakable act? The answers lie in a complex and emotional true crime case that still resonates with those who knew and loved Lauren Burk. As this tragic story, we exploring the life of Lauren, the investigation that followed, and the ongoing quest for justice that has spanned over a decade and a half. Lauren Ashley Burk was born on December 30th, 1989, in Marietta, Georgia. She was the daughter of James Burk and Vivian Gershon, who later divorced when Lauren was young. Lauren had a sister, Jacqueline, and a brother, Chad. After graduating from high school, Lauren went on to attend Auburn University, where she pursued a degree in graphic design. On campus, she was an active member of the Delta Gamma sorority, played lacrosse, and was heavily involved in the wider university community. Lauren's friends and loved ones described her as a well-liked, excellent student who was always smiling, happy, and eager to help others. She had a bright and bubbly personality that endeared her to those around her. While still in high school, Lauren had begun a relationship with a young man named Sean McQuaid. When they both enrolled at Auburn University, their relationship continued to flourish as they navigated the challenges of college life together. For Lauren and Sean, getting an education was a top priority, but they also made plans for their future, full of hope and excitement. Little did they know, however, that not all of Lauren's plans and dreams were destined to come true. The morning of March 4th, 2008, would mark the beginning of a tragic turn of events that would forever change the lives of Lauren, her family, and her community.
A vicious murder of an Auburn University student more than 10 years ago is resurfacing today. 18-year-old Lauren Burk is a student who was kidnapped in a dorm parking lot after a man pointed a gun at her. Burk was later killed. And our Parker Brandt joins us live outside the Lee County Judicial Building. So, Parker, there will be an evidentiary hearing in just a few days from now. So tell us why that hearing's being held.
Barbara, attorneys for Courtney Lockhart say they want the death penalty lifted off their client, while Lauren Burk's family say they want the sentence to remain the same.
Lauren doesn't leave my mind any of the days since we've lost her. I miss her every minute of the day.
That's Jim Burk, the father of once Auburn University student and Georgia native Lauren Burk. Lauren was kidnapped and murdered back on March 4th, 2008 by Courtney Lockhart.
The morning of March 4th, 2008, began like any other for Lauren Burk. She started her day by having breakfast at a cafe with her boyfriend, Sean. After their meal, Lauren went to her scheduled class at 11 o'clock. Following her class, Lauren called her father, James, to discuss plans for spring break and a visit to the dentist. She then headed to Sean's dorm, where she stayed until the evening. At around 8:30 p.m., Lauren had an appointment to meet with her classmate, Michael, in the library. They were set to work on a study assignment together. Around 8 p.m., Lauren left Sean's room and made her way to her car, a black 2001 Honda Civic, parked in the nearby lot. That was the last time Sean saw Lauren. When Lauren failed to show up for her library meeting, Michael began calling her cell phone. Lauren eventually answered, saying she had forgotten about the appointment and would not be coming. After that, she hung up the phone. Just a short time later, at around 9 p.m., a 911 call came in about an injured girl who had been spotted lying on the road between the Farmville Baptist Church and Route 280 on the 147 freeway. It was Lauren. Drivers had stopped their cars on the roadway, blocking traffic in both directions, to attend to the young woman lying on her back in the middle of the road, struggling to breathe. Lauren had suffered multiple wounds, and she was only wearing socks on her feet. By the time the first police car arrived at 9:12 p.m., Lauren was already unconscious. Paramedics rushed to the scene and loaded her into an ambulance, but her pulse was barely palpable. At 9:35 p.m., Lauren was taken to the East Alabama Medical Center, where doctors desperately fought to save her life. 8 minutes earlier, at 9:27 p.m., 911 dispatchers had received multiple reports of a car fire on the Auburn University campus. Firefighters and police were immediately sent to the address provided by the callers. Unable to find the owner of the burning car among the curious students attracted by the fire, the police checked the license plates and discovered that the vehicle belonged to a resident of Georgia, James Burk, Lauren's father. The police contacted James, who immediately asked what was wrong with his daughter. However, the officers had no information to share, as they did not know where Lauren was and had confirmed that no one was in the burning car. Deeply concerned, James began calling his daughter's cell phone, but Lauren did not answer. He then reached out to Lauren's friends, but none of them knew anything about her whereabouts or the car fire. Desperate to find his daughter, James contacted his ex-wife and Lauren's mother, Vivian Gershon. Sadly, Vivian knew nothing about the situation either. It was at 9:40 p.m. that Vivian called Lauren's boyfriend, Sean, informing him that Lauren was missing and her car had been burned. Sean immediately began contacting mutual acquaintances, hoping to uncover any information about Lauren's whereabouts. Through these conversations, Sean learned that Lauren had canceled her meeting with Michael, telling him that she had forgotten about it. However, Sean knew for a fact that this was not true, as Lauren had planned to go straight to the library when she left his room earlier that evening. As Lauren's family and friends desperately tried to piece together what had happened, doctors at the East Alabama Medical Center were fighting to keep her alive. Unfortunately, due to the severity of her injuries and the lack of any personal belongings or identification, the doctors did not even know her name.
Barbara, attorneys for Courtney Lockhart say they want the death penalty lifted off their client, while Lauren Burk's family say they want the sentence to remain the same.
The tragic events that claimed Lauren Burk's life left an indelible mark on the Auburn community. Despite the best efforts of the medical team, Lauren's life could not be saved. She was pronounced dead about an hour after being admitted to the hospital, the cause of her passing a single bullet wound that had punctured both of her lungs. Experts concluded that the muzzle of the gun had been just a few inches from Lauren's skin when the fatal shot was fired. As the police compared the details of the girl's passing at the hospital and the burned-out car on the Auburn campus, they quickly realized that the victim they had been unable to save was none other than Lauren Burk, the very person whose car had been found in flames. The man responsible for Lauren's tragic death was a 23-year-old named Courtney Lockhart. Lockhart's path to this horrific act was a complex one, rooted in his troubled past. Lockhart was born on October 20th, 1984, and by all accounts, he had been a nice, fun-loving guy until he joined the U.S. Army in 2004. After returning from a tour of duty in Iraq in 2005, his mother said, "He wasn't the Courtney I knew." According to his family, Lockhart became withdrawn, wary of anyone standing behind him, and would sometimes hide in closets or under the bed. In 2006, Lockhart's behavioral changes took a darker turn. He was court-martialed for assaulting other soldiers, using illegal substances, and deserting his unit without permission. Lockhart spent 7 months in detention before being dishonorably discharged from the Army later that year. As 2008 approached, Lockhart's condition appeared to deteriorate further. He barely showered, stopped visiting his young daughter and was heavily addicted to illegal substances. This downward spiral culminated in a string of burglaries and robberies that began in February 2008, with Lockhart targeting women as they were getting into their cars in parking lots. Lockhart's modus operandi was chillingly consistent. He would approach the victim from behind, threaten her with a gun, demand her purse, and attempt to steal the vehicle. It was one such crime on March 4, 2008, that led to the tragic loss of Lauren Burk's life. In a chilling confession to the police, Lockhart recounted the events of that fateful day. He had woken up in his silver Chrysler Sebring, having spent the previous night in his car not far from the East Alabama Medical Center. Needing money, Lockhart began driving around Auburn, looking for another victim. His drive eventually led him to the campus of Auburn University, where he parked next to the student dorms and spent several hours watching the students. Around 8 p.m., Lockhart noticed Lauren Burk leisurely opening the door to her car, the black 2001 Honda Civic. Without hesitation, Lockhart grabbed his revolver and approached Lauren from behind, poking her with the muzzle of his gun. Lockhart demanded to know how much money Lauren had, and when she did not respond, he pushed her into the front passenger seat of her car and got behind the wheel. According to Lockhart's confession, Lauren screamed in fear, but when she finally calmed down, she pulled $200 from her purse and handed it to him, begging him to leave. Instead, Lockhart ordered Lauren to undress, threatening her life if she refused. Lockhart then began driving around the streets of Auburn, holding Lauren at gunpoint. At one point, her phone started ringing, and Lockhart forced her to answer, telling her to make up an excuse for not showing up to her library meeting. As they drove down Highway 147, Lauren made a desperate attempt to jump out of the moving car. It was then, Lockhart claimed, that he accidentally fired the shot that would prove fatal, puncturing both of Lauren's lungs. Lockhart's chilling confession, coupled with the evidence collected from the crime scene and his subsequent apprehension, painted a grim picture of the events that unfolded on that fateful day. The investigation had uncovered a troubled individual whose descent into violence had robbed a young woman of her life, leaving a community in mourning and a family seeking justice.
The story is impossible to comprehend. It has been 10 years of pain for a local family. In 2008, college freshman Lauren Burk was forced to undress, then shot when she tried to escape. Now the man convicted of her murder says his defense wasn't good enough.
Courtney Lockhart's heinous crimes did not end with the brutal murder of Lauren Burk. Just 3 days after the young woman's tragic passing, on March 7, 2008, Lockhart struck again in a nearby town. In the parking lot of a Walmart in Noonan, Georgia, about 75 miles from Auburn, Lockhart approached a 72-year-old woman and attacked her. He hit the elderly woman on the head, threatened her, and attempted to steal her car. However, an eyewitness to the attack began following Lockhart, prompting him to return the stolen vehicle and flee the scene in a nearby silver Chrysler Sebring. A high-speed police chase ensued, and during the pursuit, officers observed Lockhart throwing an object out of the window, a .38 caliber revolver. Eventually, Lockhart's vehicle broke down, and he was apprehended by the police. At the station, Lockhart confessed that he was the one who had kidnapped and taken Lauren Burk's life. The interrogation was videotaped, becoming a key piece of evidence at his trial. Lockhart's trial began on November 8, 2010, 2.5 years after the tragic events that claimed Lauren's life. His attorneys claimed that their client had a mental illness due to his military service and that the shooting of Lauren was accidental. Lockhart pleaded not guilty by reason of mental defect or insanity. The court heard testimony from a psychologist who stated that Lockhart had an IQ of 86, which is below average, and that he had some symptoms from his time in combat, but did not have PTSD. The psychologist characterized Lockhart as immature and not thinking clearly. Despite the defense's efforts, the jury rendered a special verdict in which they recognized an additional aggravating factor, the taking of a person's life in the course of a kidnapping, The jury voted 12-0 to recommend a sentence of life without parole for Lockhart. However, the trial judge later disagreed with the jury's advisory sentence and sentenced Lockhart to death, citing the egregious nature of the kidnapping and the additional details about Lockhart's military disciplinary record that the jury had not been aware of. In his 28-page sentencing order, the judge explained his reasoning. He concluded that the kidnapping weighed heavily in favor of the death penalty, as Lauren was alone, unarmed, and chosen by Lockhart at random. The judge also emphasized that the kidnapping was particularly egregious because it occurred on a college campus, a place where students should feel safe. Furthermore, the court reasoned that had the jury been aware of the full extent of Lockhart's military disciplinary record, their sentencing recommendation would likely have differed. The judge noted that the jury heard testimony regarding Lockhart's service, but was unaware of the true nature of his misconduct in the military. The judge's decision to impose the death penalty, despite the jury's recommendation of life without parole, highlighted the severity of Lockhart's crimes and the profound impact they had on the community. The judge's thorough explanation of his reasoning underscored the gravity of the situation and the need for the ultimate punishment. With Lockhart's conviction and death sentence, the Burk family and the Auburn community sought some measure of justice for the senseless loss of Lauren's life. However, the battle was far from over, as Lockhart would continue to appeal his sentence in the years to come.
And leave her dead in a row. How many?
Well, during that time, I was undiagnosed. I tended to stay away from 18-year-old girls.
So it would be 0, right? You not?
Yes, 0.
Prosecutors also pointed out on Lockhart's trial team, they overcame a huge burden, including Lockhart's criminal confession and overwhelming forensic evidence.
State courts and federal courts both have held that a jury verdict that recommends life without parole is very strong evidence that trial counsel was competent and effective, as they were in this case.
Judge Walker used judicial override and sentenced Lockhart to death based on Lockhart's alleged involvement in multiple robberies and an attempted kidnapping, both before and after Lauren's murder, that the jury didn't hear about.
I hope Judge Walker will maintain his original position that would overturn the 12-vote jury decision with life with no parole to the death penalty, maintain that.
It has now been 15 years since the tragic events that claimed Lauren Burk's life. Courtney Lockhart remains on death row in Alabama, but he has not given up trying to appeal his sentence. In the years following his conviction and death sentence, Lockhart has made multiple attempts to challenge the ruling. In August 2013, an Alabama court upheld the sentence, and in April 2014, the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals denied his request for a retrial. Lockhart then appealed to the Supreme Court of Alabama, but his motion was denied in September 2014. In January 2015, he took his case to the Supreme Court of the United States, but his petition was also denied. In 2018, Lockhart made another attempt to challenge the sentence, with lawyers from a human rights organization representing him. They tried to convince the court that the lawyers defending Lockhart in 2010 had mishandled the case. However, despite some flaws in the original defense, it ultimately did not change the outcome, and the death sentence was upheld once again. As recently as April 2021, the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals reaffirmed Lockhart's death sentence, leaving his fate in the hands of the legal system. Lauren's parents, James Burk and Vivian Gershon, have remained steadfast in their determination to ensure that Lockhart's death sentence is upheld. They have made it clear that they will never give up and will do everything in their power to see that justice is served for their beloved daughter. "Courtney Lockhart gave my daughter the death penalty," said James Burk. "There's no reason why he shouldn't have the death penalty. He didn't give her a second chance, and he shouldn't get a second chance either."